Well, welcome back to Imperfect, the Heart Centered Leadership Podcast. Super, super delighted to welcome Ben Lytle to the show. And Ben, I said to you jokingly before I hit record, you're the first potentialist that I've had on the show, but it's all about these extrinsic names that we can give ourselves. So I'm looking forward to diving into that and really sharing with our global audience what you bring to leadership and leadership development. So I've got some great questions if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Ben, how do you see leaders balancing the rapid pace of technology advancement with the need to maintain human connection and empathy in the workplace?
That's a great question. One of the things that we often lose perspective on in technology and when things are changing around us is that people have gone through this before. My father was old enough to remember when the telephone came into place in rural areas, and many people had the same reaction as people have to AI today. I know that sounds odd to us, but to them, their reaction was, well, why would anybody ever go visit if you can just talk on that dang thing? I'm sure the government's listening in. So they reacted, knee-jerk reaction is negative. We will figure this out. We will, we're actually in very early years of electronic communications like you and I are doing right now. We're really, still in the early stages. Imagine Zoom, version 67. Imagine holograms when you and I are sitting in the same, feel like we're sitting in the same room. So I think the main thing for leaders is to remain open-minded and don't knee-jerk one way or the other, and just remind people that business is still the network that makes business work is relationships. Always has, always will be. And
Absolutely.
You go into, if you're a young person, you say, okay, I'm going to figure out how to build intimacy, how to build a close relationship with someone, even if I don't physically ever see them. And it's absolutely possible. Another historical example, people built close, long-term relationships with letters where it often took a month or two for the other person to even get the letter. So it's possible. It's just a new technology in a new time.
And it's such a great point because my children laugh when I tell them I lived in a small rural community and I was on one of those party lines and we were 3 long and 2 short. And, we had the green and the orange phones that were on the wall. And I remember when the big console TVs first came out and our dad had bought a remote, but it had a long cord going from the TV and you would push buttons. But we used to get up and physically change the channel. So I love how you framed that because I think AI is here, but I very much feel like you. I think we're at the inception. I think it's going to go in a deep dive in 4 different platforms. I just read a really good book from an entrepreneur out of Japan on AI. And again, we just have to keep educating ourselves, which is what leaders do every day anyways, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I'd like to add on to AI, first of all, I'm a huge fan of what AI is going to do for the world and for all of us. It will be like our cell phones were on our smartphones only on steroids. And what it can do for science and invention and medicine and helping us all to become our absolute best is just remarkable. One of the things to keep you grounded that today, when I ask audiences, very few people hold up their hand and volunteer, but it's answering the question. Each of us have to answer the question, what makes me human? And if you reflect on what makes you human, you need to really understand. I mean, people can tell you, you can go read it, but you have to feel it. You have to feel that humanness inside yourself. And the reason that's so important is as we integrate with intelligent automations, particularly AI, and then later with robotics, it's going to be really important that we have an answer to that question, because if we understand the answer to that question, we can integrate in a way that enhances our humanity and doesn't degrade it. And that's the whole goal. That's the goal with every technology. We've seen our smartphones degrade some people's technology. I mean, some people's humanity. So that's what we all have to keep in mind. That'll be our North Star.
It's interesting because as you were talking, it made me think of the number one question that I ask leaders on the daily. What do you want? Most people don't know. So I think if we maybe make that a sub question to what makes you human, and for me, what came top of mind, if I answer that for you, to me, heart centered leadership is that mind and heart connection.
Yep.
So if I'm in cognitive, emotional overdraft, I don't have that humanness.
Yep. That's right.
So keeping that in check is
Yep.
is kind of my North Star, whether it's in my life or as a leader.
Yep. In answer to your question, because it connects back to being a potentialist, mine's very clear. And that is, I will do my best to be my best and leave the world and the people I meet along the way a little better than I found them.
I love that.
That's my guiding star. That's what drives me every day, and that's what causes me to want to give and live to my potential every day. Not being a fanatic about things, but simply becoming my best and living my best. That's really it.
And I think it's a daily effort. It's something
Yep.
we're a work in progress, right? Okay, my second question has permanent residency on the show, and I've asked over 300 leaders this question. What imperfections does Ben bring to his heart-centered leadership?
Yeah, well, in my first and second book, but particularly the second book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, I actually talk a lot about what I call crucibles. And crucibles are recurring patterns of mistakes we make. And those patterns are very difficult to change because they come from, the old saying, our greatest strengths become our weaknesses. And learning to discipline that side of yourself is very difficult because you're hardwired that way. And so that is what I call a crucible. You have to really work at those and remain really conscious of them. For me, I have a lot of a natural talent I have is the ability to focus and drive very hard to solve super complex problems and then explain them to people. That's what I love doing. And if I'm not careful, I can become obsessive on those things. I can become obsessive in driving to understand something, drive to write it down, drive to communicate it. So that's my number one that I've had to manage very closely my entire life. And at times I've pushed myself to almost being point of being ill. I pushed myself to the point where I'm not doing any good anymore. I'm banging my head against the wall. There's all those things, but it all comes from that one crucible of learning to discipline myself and moderate my focused attention.
Absolutely. Discipline and structure. I think that's a daily wheelhouse for us all, Ben. So I join you. I think, again, it's something we all work on. And I think sometimes it's the excitement of being a visionary or a thought leader and seeing the end result. And then you have the discipline and the structure and you just want to go, go, go. But sometimes we need to slow down and not have that catastrophic way of thinking and just slow go. It doesn't have to
It'll
be
be
fast.
fine. The world will just be fine, whether we
Absolutely.
or not.
But I join you in that club. So many others have been similar answers on the show. So you're in great company.
Yeah.
Okay, my third question. What qualities do you believe will define the most effective leaders in a future shaped by constant change and uncertainty?
That's the subject of my second book, which is wisdom. Imagine if we selected all of our elected officials not based on their advocacy of our favorite cause, but on their wisdom, their fairness, their ability to understand the other person's point of view and find compromise. That imagine if every CEO was driven by that, by making as wise as possible decisions. My second book is really all about I make the case that that will be the next evolution of humankind, that we are headed towards the democratization of wisdom. We've achieved largely the democratization of information and knowledge. We still have a lot of people in the world who aren't as well educated as we'd like, but we'll get there. And these new technologies will help us get there. But now the next step is to become wise, to use all this information and all this technological power and everything we know today and these wonderful predictive capabilities of AI and analytical capabilities, to use them wisely. And that's what I believe will become the de facto standard for all leaders and really all people.
I got to throw another question in here because of what you just said, because I just, the way you frame that, I understand what you just said, but I have to throw in this question. Explain the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Okay, wisdom, it's easier to tell you, first of all, what wisdom is not. Wisdom is not knowledge, although knowledge helps. Wisdom is not age, although age helps. Wisdom is not IQ, because even though it helps, but it's not, at times it can work against you. Some of the wisest people I've ever known, like you, I interviewed 400 wise people in depth to figure out how they became that way, what drove them, what makes who they are. And some of the wisest people I have met are very simple people. One spent her entire career as a maid, but put 3 kids through college on her own. Another gentleman is a janitor at a school. But they're what people used to say is they're wise in the ways of the world. Many times, very well-educated people, very bright people are not. And so wisdom is the pure definition. It's the art of living well.
Yeah.
What's the art of living well? Making good decisions, the best possible decisions that serve you and others throughout your life. That's what wisdom is. And you learn it by learning. Knowledge helps, but it's perspective. It's seeing life as it is and accepting life as it is. It's a number of things. And then in the moment of decision, applying it so that you don't allow bias or instinct or emotions to make your decisions for you. That's wisdom.
I had to throw that question in. Oh, how could we not have finished question 3 without a 3D? So great. Okay, last leadership question. As a potentialist, what advice would you give leaders who want to inspire their teams to embrace limitless possibilities in their personal and professional growth?
Well, a quick story for me is I discovered human potential in a college class when I was 20 years old. I mean, you heard the words, but a professor told our class, it said, you don't have to be what anyone else expects you to be. You need to discover who you are and then live who that person is. Live to those innate talents you've been given. And then he opened a body of work because of my interest, and it became my lifetime avocation. It caused me to look at life, and of course, I think I was probably wired that way to begin with, but it caused me to look at life through the lens of potential. And that meant how I looked at leading and managing. I looked at people and tried to to help them see the potential I saw in them and to bring it out. In my entrepreneurial activities, other people would walk right by an idea, but I'd spend more time on it. And I'd try to look at, okay, what could this be? There's something here. Not every one of them was worth doing, but a lot of them were worth taking a harder look at than a lot of people did. And so have been remarkably successful as an entrepreneur because I looked at these things through the lens of potential. And that's the way I look at life in the future. I don't believe the human race has even begun to hit its potential yet. And wisdom would be a huge step for us. But we have so much in front of us. And my gosh, what an exciting time to live when we are literally, and all of your listeners may not realize we are living in the period, the next few decades, the period of the greatest change in human history.
Absolutely.
Greatest change in history. And we all get to be there and be part of it and witness it. And for younger people, tell your grandkids and great grandkids, you saw this, what came to pass. And they'll be shocked at the way we live today.
Oh, absolutely. It's like when you visit different places in the world, and I'm just going to use Italy as an example.
Mhm.
You look at the buildings and the architecture and when it was built, and they didn't have the resources and the tools and all the things that we have today. And it leaves you back in that, sense of awe and wonder.
Absolutely.
And here we are now with many resources and manpower and all the things. And I always kind of daydream to go back and think what a time that would have been to have lived as well. So it's like you said, we're in a unique time, but we can say the same thing about when the telephone, when we started the podcast about that. It's a renewal, but it's also a perspective in how we choose. People can say it's too fast and it's this, or you can just, jump on the carpet and enjoy the ride.
Well, and keep, 5 right off the top of my head, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, 3 prior industrial revolutions. The people who embraced change and didn't look at it through a lens of fear, looked at it through a lens of potential and opportunity, prospered.
Yeah.
Those who became fearful and tried to ignore it or avoid it didn't do so well. They ultimately did, but it was a long time, and they missed a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Henry Ford's a good example, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to switch to my Fab Four. These are just 4 fun questions so our listeners can get to know Ben a little bit differently.
Okay.
What is one practical tip that you want our listeners to take away from our conversation today?
Believe in yourself and humanity a lot more than you do. I can almost guarantee everyone underestimates themselves and humanity. And that's the work of our ego, who's trying to continue to convince us that it's too dangerous to do anything, just sit still. But really, that's how you break out of those distortions that the ego creates for you of life. Is start by just believing in yourself a lot more and believing in others and humanity in the future a lot more. Things will be just wonderful, and you can make them more wonderfuler. So,
Absolutely. Okay, second question. If your leadership style had a theme song, what would it be?
fly me to the moon.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Frank, right? You just can't. Third question, if you had to summarize a key takeaway or lesson from the discussion we've had today, what one point or takeaway really stands out for you?
I believe in synchronicity, which for your listeners that aren't familiar with, it's a law of physics, but it's said that with things that are seemingly unrelated can happen in thousands, millions of places at once. And that's why the saying there is no such thing as an original idea is true, because those are things trying to come into the world. Inspirations and ideas are trying to come into the world. What I have taken away this morning, thanks to you, is you are out searching for wisdom and truth and how to be better leaders and how to make a better world, just like I am, and just like thousands or tens of thousands or millions of other people are doing, and certainly thought leaders. We're trying to pass on to this other generation. Don't be fearful of change. Look at what's coming. Find the best in yourself. Live your best life. Live like a wise person, because that's the pinnacle of human achievement. So that's my big takeaway from today.
I love that. Well, Ben, I knew this was going to be a delightful conversation. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and your heart with us. And I'm going to have you finish the show by finishing this sentence for me. Heart centered leadership is.
Heart centered leadership is that you care about others and you care about the meaning of your life. I won an award recently, and a friend was asked to do a comment on a video, and he said, Ben has been a remarkable leader because he cares about people and he cares about the mark he leaves in the world. And so I think that's a wonderful guidance for everybody. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. Like I said, that I admire that maid who educated her 3 kids on a maid salary through their master's degrees as much as I admire people like Jamie Dimon, who I have an enormous respect for.